mostly live from Huntertown, Indiana. It's Soarin on the air. And we had a good time last week talking about birds on the raptors in their nest. And so it got me to looking around. I said, boy, there's a lot of information out there about interesting bird nests. So I thought today we'd go look at some other types of birds and non-raptors. I'm sorry, no raptors today. And we'll take a look at some of the stuff you might be familiar with. And of course, my sticky fingers aren't working. So the first bird that we'll start with is one of our summer visitors, ruby-throated hummingbirds. And they got a nice, interesting nest. It's primarily made of lichen and spider webs. So the ruby-throated hummingbirds go out and they pick strands off of spider webs, and they get lichen and they stretch. They put it all together, and by using the spider webs, it makes the nest expandable. So as the little ones grow bigger and bigger, the nest expands out, and so it can accommodate all the kids in there. So this is kind of one of the unusual things. So most of the hummingbirds do something similar to this. So they, instead of picking material like sticks and things like that, actually small pieces of lichen or small pieces of bark, and then they weave that into their nest. But getting spider webs is also dangerous for the hummingbirds, because if they get too close or the wind blows them or something like that, they can actually get caught in the spider web. And then the spider has something to eat, so it's kind of an interesting thing. So occasionally people will rescue a hummingbird from a spider web. Next bird, some of you might be down there in the south might be familiar with. That's red cockaded woodpeckers, and they're usually found down in some of the southern pine forest. And of course, just like most woodpeckers, they excavate a hole. But what makes them unique is that they excavate the hole in a particular type of pine, so that the sap goes around the outside of the hole and down the tree. And this discourages the snakes and things like that, or other predators, from climbing up the tree to get to the hole where the birds are nesting. And I did a little more research and found out that things like red-breasted nuthatches also will take pieces of resin, like from a pine tree, and actually place it around the hole, also to have the same effect of keeping predators from climbing up and getting into the hole. So it defends the nest, or protects the nest against predators that might get into the hole by climbing up the tree. And then also the white-breasted nuthatches will take, and they decorate, if you will, the outside of their hole with beetles that have a particular odor to them. So they'll crush the beetles and put those around the hole to protect it against other things like ants and stuff like that from coming in. So all these birds have certain unique things they do to raise their young safely. So right, here we go. Red cockaded woodpecker. Okay. So look out there, look around and investigate. You see a bird that looks interesting, look it up. There might be some really interesting things that some of these birds do. And here's a bird that's a little bit familiar to some of you, the kingfisher. This is a belted kingfisher. And what it does is it excavates a hole in the side of a stream embankment or river embankment, something like that. But they'll find a nice embankment, and what they'll do is they'll land on the embankment, excavate a small hole, and then as they go in, they'll actually use their feet to actually push dirt out, and they'll claw their way in, and they'll go back about 6 or 7 feet, and then excavate a cavity back there. And it's very interesting to watch a kingfisher, because they'll fly right up, and just as they get to the entrance, it's like they put on their speed brakes, then they fold their wings in, and into the hole they go. So this is one of the things that they do, but it's sometimes a little dangerous, because sometimes snakes find these holes and they crawl into the hole, and so they got to be a little bit careful. And I have a quiz for you guys. All right, is that a male or a female? Okay, so somebody can go back and tell me what's going on. Male or female? All right. So we'll wait for see if we got some answers. See who gets an attaboy or attagirl or attaperson. So, no nobody's
responses.
answering. Is anybody paying attention? No, it's a nice day outside. They'd rather be outside than in here. So anyways, belly kingfisher. I don't see anybody answering. I'll give you 5 more seconds. Nobody's answering. Nobody's answering. Okay, it's a female. The female has the belt. The males don't. So there you go. Just in case you're ever on Jeopardy or something like that, or you're at the local pub doing quiz night. Okay, so anyways, belly kingfisher. And let's see. So we're going to go a little bit further afield. This is a bird you're probably not familiar with, and this is well, some of you might be able to tell. This is a swift, and this is what they call an edible nest swift. Okay, it's found down in Southeast Asia, and what it does is it takes saliva, nice sticky saliva, and actually forms a nest. Okay, that sticks to the wall. Our chimney swifts do a similar thing, except they also add sticks and things to it. And they use the saliva as an adhesive to stick the nest onto the side, and also to get the adhere the nest material to each other. So, anyways, edible nest swift. Okay, and one of the things that was kind of interesting about it, right here you can see one down here with an egg in it, and so right down here in the corner. And in the Orient, if you go to the Southeast Asia, people actually put up housing for the birds. They actually put up like a chimney, if you will. And then what they'll do is they'll play recordings at night during migration time to attract the swifts. I think I was in Bangkok or someplace like that in the spring, and I heard all these swifts, and I was looking all around for the swifts, and finally realized that no, there's no swifts around. It's people playing recordings to attract the swifts to go into the, and of course then you take the nest there, and you dissolve that in water and add some spices to it, and it makes a soup. I tried it out once, and unfortunately it gave me a headache, so I don't know what was in there. Maybe it was the additives, maybe it was the nest, but anyway, but it wasn't all that tasty. Okay, so but apparently they do like it in the Orient, in Asia. So now here's a tricky one. I'll give you a minute or two to look at the picture. And this is a bird, I think I mentioned it last week, a potu, that actually lays its nest on, or lays its egg on the branch. And so here's the potu. You thought that was part of the tree, didn't you? Okay, almost looked like part of the tree. So here's the potu, and here's her egg sitting around the nest, and or on the branch. So there's nothing there holding it. She'll fly off. It stays there. She feeds at night. She's a night bird, and then she'll come back, and then keep incubating the egg. So, and the potus are found down in the tropics, so that it does stay relatively warm and protected. But you can see how she just blends right in. You can walk past a dozen of these and not even see them during the daytime. And oops, can't do that. Oops, there we go. And so here's mom and chick. After a while, and you can see that she still looks like she's part of that branch. In fact, some of these potus, when they're sitting there, if there's a predator or something like that that approaches them, sometimes when they're sitting on the branch, they'll actually wiggle and move, so it makes it look like bark or leaves or things like that moving. So it'll actually sway back and forth to look like it's part of the vegetation, and so you wouldn't notice them so much. So that's kind of an interesting thing with the egg laying right there on top of a branch. No construction needed, no gathering of material or anything like that. And another example of that is the white tern. Some people call them fairy terns, but they're really white terns. And again, they lay their eggs right on the branch, and so they'll go fly off. The male and female take turns incubating the egg. And so white terns found in Hawaii, all around basically around the tropical areas along the ocean.
Yeah. Gigi has a question.
She
asked how to spell the previous bird's name.
Potu?
Yeah.
Potoo.
Okay.
Potu. and they're kind of a really neat bird, and you can hear them at night. So they're kind of, yeah. So they kind of sound really mysterious and everything, you know. And here's the white tern, and you can actually see the egg, you know, exposed there on the branch, and you notice it's speckled and everything, so it kind of blends in, and so you know, so you don't really need all that big branchy things, you know, the big nest and all that to actually raise a family, you know. Maybe humans should take the clue. You don't need a great big house. You just need, you know, just room enough for 3 or 4 people, you know. But of course, then small house, 3 or 4 people, they get on each other's nerves. But apparently, the birds work it out. And this is a kind of interesting bird. This is a monotypic bird. See, new word today in your vocabulary. Monotypic means only one of its in its family. Okay, so it's unique. So this is a hammerkop, okay, or sometimes hammerkoff, you know, hammerhead. Okay, and it's related to storks and to and maybe to herons someplace, particularly the boat-billed heron. If some of you guys have seen a picture of those guys, and these guys make maybe 3-4 nests a year, and made of thousands and thousands of pieces of material. I should go back to the story on the hammerkop. The hammerkop is a respected and a feared bird found in Africa. It has a lot of folklore tied to it. If you kill a hammerkop, you will probably be hit by lightning, or your house will be hit by lightning. So they're protected. You know, the gods protect it, and so you don't. But that's some tribes. Other tribes, they find them very delicious. You know, with a side order of fries or something. You know, so well, maybe a side order of manioc. But so anyways, they build these interesting nests. Okay. There we go. So they make these huge nests. These things are about 6 feet across. You can see the entrance hole down here. And so these nests are used by the hammerkop, you know, to raise their young. They make a hole through to the inside, which they line with mud, and they actually have a cavity in there for the nest that's all lined with mud. So there's these mud cavities inside, or mud-lined cavities, for the birds to raise their young. And part of the thing about the hammerkop, some of the tribes think that they're shapeshifters, because a lot of times you'll see a hammerkop go in, and then maybe 15, 20 minutes later, a snake comes out. Well, it's just that somebody enjoyed a good meal. Okay, so, you know, and these nests are strong enough that a man can stand on top of them without them collapsing. So it's really kind of interesting. Also, other birds, small birds and stuff, also use the nest. And so they'll just, you know, excavate a small spot around the sides, and they'll move in. And like I said, snakes will go in there, and they'll, of course, find dinner or whatever, which may be why they build 3 or 4 nests a year, is to finally find a place that's safe and they can raise their young. So, rather unique nest, and rather unique way of constructing it, and also a way that it's actually supporting the rest of the community, if you will, of other animals. You probably saw this in Africa, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Social weavers, okay. Social weavers, and you can see all the little nests are all piled together. Social weavers about the size of our house sparrow, to give you an idea. And so they all go into the construction of the thing, which makes it very nice for the birds, because by being together as a community, they know about predators coming, that kind of thing. Also, where to go find food. They're mainly seed eaters, you know. They will take a little bit of protein, you know, small bugs and stuff like that. But so they'll build these huge things. The bad part is that if a predator comes along, he can have a field day in here, okay? Like the gymnogene, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago, okay? They love these things because they get right up in there, put their long arm or long foot in there, and just twist it around and just pluck out little ones. So, has its advantages, has its disadvantages. So it's like an apartment building. And here's another bird that you saw down in Africa, bayou weaver. And this guy has just built this beautiful, wonderful nest there. And that's all grass. It's all woven together. And so after he gets it all complete, he goes and finds a female, invites her over to take a look at it. And she says, wrong color curtains. I don't like it. And so he has to take it apart. And then he reassembles it, until it's put together for his liking. And then she says, yes, it's acceptable. So the Bayou Weaver is just slightly larger than our house sparrow, not much more than that. But they go through a lot of effort to weave this thing all together so it's a nice hanging nest hanging off the end of a branch or something like that. And you can probably find 5, 10, 15 of these in a tree, a suitable tree, and you'll see them hanging around like Christmas balls on a Christmas tree. And so, again, nice fresh grass. Yeah, you don't use old grass, that's all got to be fresh, green, and that's what, so he has to do this. He does it in about 2 days, puts this thing together in about 2 days. And so if mom doesn't like it, off it goes. And here's one of my favorites, bee eaters. Bee eaters are sort of related to kingfishers, except that these guys are primarily insectivores. So they go out and they sally after insects. Why they're called bee eaters, I'm not quite sure, because they don't eat bees. But that's another story. When you see them flying, they make a lot of noise because they usually go in groups. And again, excavate a hole. And so you have excavates the hole, scoops it all out, and just prays that a snake doesn't come along. And a lot of times you go out to a riverbank or something like that, and you just see the whole riverbank just dotted with holes. So it looks like a, excuse me, dotted with holes. So all these bee eaters are working in there. Now some bee eaters actually excavate a hole in the ground, and so they'll actually dig a hole out and nest in the ground. So rosy bee eaters found down in Africa, they excavate a big hole or a hole, and then they go down the ground. You'll find a field with about maybe 2 dozen, 3 dozen of these bee eaters, carmine bee eaters, all these different ones. So we talked about that. So something a little bit different. We'll go to the water now, and these are horn coots, and you can see a little horn there. They're found down in the Andes Mountains on lakes, and up there in northwestern Argentina, over into Chile and down. Yeah, we had one heck of a long hike to go out there to see these things, because there weren't any roads out there, Anyways, this is at about 7,000 feet. And so what these guys do is they find a shallow part in the lake. And a lot of these lakes are just temporary anyways. And what they do is they bring pebbles in and they make a little island. And then they take and put vegetation on the island, and then they put their nest on the island itself. So they do a lot of work for these things. They just take, so they excavate the shore, make an island, and then they, pectoral sandpiper, just in case you want to know. Spends his summers up here, goes down there for our winters. Okay, so, but yeah, that was a heck of a hike. That's about it. I think it was about an 8-kilometer hike. Yeah, when we finally got back, we were late getting to dinner. We didn't eat dinner that night until 11 o'clock. And it was cold. So, anyways, that's another story for another time. So, but anyways, horn coots. Okay, little grebes. Okay, these are found in Asia. They're kind of like our pied-bill grebes that we have here. And again, what these guys do, again, using vegetation, they'll find a mound or some place in a lake, and then they'll just take vegetation and pull it up onto the mound and slowly build it up until they have enough elevation that they're up off the water. And then they'll kind of lay their eggs in there. And of course, these guys are really water birds. Like I said, they're very related to our there it goes. The whole brain just went out, didn't it? Okay. So anyways, to our little grebes. Well, so beast grebes, little grebes, all these guys are small, and they require water to take off. Okay, and they have these funny feet with the actual little webs on them, so they can kind of use it for paddling. And they're insectivores and also eat small minnows and small fish and things like that. But yeah, you'll see them diving out there. So, and another one of these interesting little birds, jacanas. And sometimes people call them lily trotters because they walk on top of the leaves and the lily pads and things like that. what they do is they find a nice, adequate lily pad that's floating out there, and they add a little bit of vegetation to it. Then they lay the eggs on top. Here you can see the kind of the long feet of the lily trotter or the jacana, or if you want to go with Portuguese, it's Jasana, okay, whichever. So anyways, long toes like that, and they just walk across the top. And so, yeah, these are really handsome birds, these Jasanas. Nope, can't do that. Oh. Now, this is a really interesting bird. This is a common tailor bird. And they call them tailor birds because what they do is they find an adequate leaf to put their, where they want to put their nest, and they actually poke holes, and they use small pieces of vine or spider web or something like that, and they actually sew the bottom together, and then they lay their nest, or they make their nest inside that. So they actually are doing a job like a tailor. And these guys are about the size of, let's see what we have, about the size of our Carolina wren. They're bigger than our normal warblers. There's a debate of what family these guys belong to. They're either old world warblers, or they could be cisticolas, or as they show them in the book, they're little brown jobs. Okay, so they're about 6 inches long, and so they're a little bit bigger than our warblers. And but the interesting thing is taking that beak and then making the holes, perforating the leaves, then sewing it together so it makes a holder for building their nest inside. All kinds of interesting things out there, with birds and wildlife. And I got a lot of stories to go with all of them.
You've been a lot of places, Bob.
Yeah, I've been a few places. So here's another unique thing. If you're kind of lazy and you don't really feel like taking care of your kids, you do something like the mallee fowl here. Mallee fowl excavates a large hole in a sandy area, and then fills it with leaves and other debris, that can compost, if you will, which will break down in the soil. And then they lay their eggs in there, and then they cover it then with more sand and with more leaves and things. So as the leaves and things decay, they generate heat, and the heat incubates the eggs. Now, some of the birds like the mallee fowl, scrub fowl, these guys, all sort of in the same family. Some of them will actually go back and check the nest once a day, and they'll excavate a small hole, put their head down in it, and check to see if there's the temperature. And I think that's where the whole thing comes with the ostriches, sticking their head in the sand. They check the temperature to make sure that what's happening in keeping the incubation temperature constant. So what they do is if it's too cool, they add more debris to it. If it's too hot, they remove stuff from it. So they're always regulating the temperature here. So it's a pretty neat little thing. And we saw those are in Australia, but there are other related ones, other scrub fowl that throughout Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia, any of those islands along that band there. So the area of, this is up in, where was this? This was north of Victoria, and it's called the Mallee. As a matter of fact, that's interesting. Yeah, it's the trees and stuff, and it's the territory. And so Mallee fowl, of course, up here in the Mallee. But a more interesting bird, there's malleos, and this is a whole flock gang of malleos. Malleos are like a goose-sized bird, and again, just like the mallee fowl I just showed you, they bury their eggs, but where they go to a place where there's geothermal activity. So this is like where you have warm ground because of volcanic activity, if you will, heating up the ground. So this area is all bare because the trees can't live there because of the warmth, the heat. And what these guys do is they go in and they excavate a deep hole, maybe almost 5 feet down. They'll excavate the hole and dig it out, and then drop the eggs in there, bury it, and then they leave. And so when the chicks are born, they're all on their own. Typically when these chicks come out of the eggs, they're almost ready to fly, okay? So they're very close to being ready to take care of themselves. So, but they're a large egg too. It's, even though these guys are about the size of a goose, the egg is about almost 7, 8 inches across. So it's a good size egg. And one of the dangers for these guys is the fact that the natives like them. They like the eggs. So they'll go out there and they'll excavate the eggs, for themselves. But the government and the egg hunters have reached a compromise. The government allows them to take so many eggs, and so many eggs are left for the birds to reproduce. Well, let's see how we're doing here. We're doing good. Oh, yeah. And we've probably seen this. This is a hornbill. And hornbills do, I don't know, maybe it goes that way. Okay. Maybe it goes that direction. So hornbills are kind of interesting. They're found down, of course, in Asia. This is a giant hornbill. It's found from, or is it great? It's great hornbill. And it's found from India all the way across over to southern China. And what these guys do is they're cavity nesters, but what they do is they find an adequate nest. They eat a lot of food, and then the male hornbill actually takes the female goes in the nest, and the male hornbill then seals up the nest, gets mud and other things, and actually seals up everything except for a small slot. Okay, and then he feeds the female in that slot. And so she lays her eggs in there, she incubates the eggs, and he brings back enough food for them that they can live. And finally, when the bird's at fledging stage, then finally they break down the material and let them out, let the kids out. And so here's a typical nest spot. And so she's nesting in there, and you see it's already started pulling the mud up around to enclose her. And in fact, I think at the Fort Wayne Zoo, I think they had a hornbill that they actually allowed to do that. So it's kind of a really neat experience. So another thing, so you keep mom under control, and also this is a good way of protecting the young and everything, because other predators and stuff can't get to it. And so. And here's one of my little guys. This is a horned arrow found down South America. And it makes a clay nest. Looks like an oven, thus the word hornero, okay? For you Spanish-speaking guys, okay? For you not Spanish-speaking guys, it's still a hornero nest, okay? And so this is all mud and clay, and when it makes the nest, or builds this, actually the nesting part is back over here, and there's a little wall that's built so that you have to go in around behind the wall to get to the nesting area. And there's a lot of people trying to figure out, sometimes they're counterclockwise, sometimes they're clockwise. They don't know. These guys are about the size of a robin. And you find if you go down South America, on any of the cattle ranches and stuff, where you have fence lines, you'll see hornero nest all along on top of the fence posts. You'll see them in trees, you see them all kinds of places. And in fact, somewhere I saw a picture of one sitting on the air conditioner of a house, So, but they're primarily insectivores, go after bugs and stuff, so they're appreciated being there by the cattle ranchers. And finally, you guys are probably getting tired of me. The last thing, these are oropendulas, and oropendulas are members of the not the COVID family. There goes Bob. Okay, he's gone on. Oh, there's your trash cans coming. Sorry, we've been begging for new trash can. No, stop. I'm sorry. Anyways, so oropendulas make these hanging nests, okay? Thus the pendula, oro, meaning gold, right? So gold nesting, okay? So they hang, they're communal nesters. These guys are about the size of a small crow, to give you an idea. There's some that are smaller, some that are larger, but these guys are about that size. And I think he's fine. Okay, I'll let her run out after the trash cans here in a minute. But anyways, the interesting thing about these guys, they nest in a colony, but also around that colony are wasp nests. And so here we have a symbiotic relationship, which we don't entirely understand, but the wasps keep other predators away, like snakes and things like that, or possums or other things that might attack the nest. In turn, apparently, the Oropendulas drive away the red-fronted caracaras that like to feed on the wasp nest. So that's kind of an interesting symbiotic relationship. The other thing that's really interesting is we know about cowbirds, and cowbirds are kleptoparasitic nesters. Okay, so they dump an egg in another bird's nest for that bird. So the Oropendulas allow the cowbirds to do that. They allow them to have one egg in their nest. And this works out real well for them because one of the problems that the birds have, just like we have here, is you got things called bot flies. And the bot flies come in, and of course they'll go on to the young ones and drain their blood and kill them. So by having the cowbirds, though, love bot flies. So by having the cowbird, he hatches out first. He keeps the bot flies off the young ones, the Oropendula fledglings. So he's constantly cleaning them and grooming them, and so he's paying for the being taken care of. So a lot of things are out there going on, So it's always worthwhile just going out there and looking, observing, dig into things. If you want to learn more about some of these odd things, there's a book called the Neotropical Primer. And it talks all about things that are going on in South America, the symbiotic relationships between plants, animals, birds, insects, all of these things. So it's really neat out there, So get up, turn up the Netflix, okay? And get out there, look around. You don't know what you're seeing. And right now it's starting to get exciting. I've heard people reporting now that they're hearing red-tailed hawks doing courtship calls. The great horned owls have been doing that. In fact, I think it's kind of tailing off, so I think that they've already started going nesting. So, which leads me up to next week. Next week's going to be X-rated. Well, actually XX or whatever. And we're going to talk about courtships and breeding of raptors. So so send the kids out of the room, okay? And because we don't want the kids embarrassing you by asking questions, okay? And so we'll talk, that's what we're going to talk about next week. So I'm going to say goodbye because I have to run off to go to school and see if I can learn more about what I'm doing. Okay, so bye, and join us next week.